What up? Welcome back to the channel. I'm That J. We're locked in. This is the Legacy of Black Wall Street Part 1 on the OWN network. This is a two-part series. I figured that this one would be good to jump into just because y'all know me. I like to break down shows. I give the recap of it, give my perspective of it. But also, history and geography, those are always two of the things I always liked growing up. I still watch the History Channel a lot to today. But before we get into this episode, shout out to the notification gang. If you're new to the channel and be a part of this, hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you get something every time I upload. Hit that like button, it's the easiest thing you can do. Now, Tulsa, Oklahoma, this is where blacks became self-sufficient in the early 1900s, leading up to the devastating massacre that went on and where they burned down the whole town. But the reason I like this is because growing up, my mom would always try to get us to go down to Oklahoma with her to the black rodeo in Bowley. I didn't understand it. I didn't appreciate it as a child, but now that I'm older, I'm like, hey, I should have went more. But let's jump into this episode and break this down. This is episode 1, The Legacy of Black Wall Street on the OWN network. Starting episode off, you see we have the graffiti on the wall, Black Wall Street. This is present day. Now, Greenwood is a town right outside. You could say it's a suburb of Tulsa, but Greenwood is actually where the Black Wall Street was. And this intro is just saying, hey, this was a place for black, successful black people. We came out there, we owned everything. It was actually 35 blocks. They owned everything, the grocery stores, the movie theaters, anything you could think of, the doctors, everything was black. I won't say predominantly black, it was black. Because this is the place where we all came together, where our dollar, we could circulate it and everybody can profit off of it. Doesn't matter. If you're out growing the food, you got somebody selling it. It's a black person, the whole streamline of black people. They're giving us video footage of what was actually happening in 1921. And it's amazing to see that you see all these black folk. They're all doing something. Everybody's happy. We know that there's racism going on within Tulsa. So that's the reason Black Wall Street was built. And with this racism, it also comes, hell, man, how dare those black people be doing just as good as us, if not better, because there's a lot of details that people don't even know that was going on in Black Wall Street during this time. Along with the racism and hate that was built up, in the end, Greenwood, the whole district ended up getting burned down and it was a huge massacre. Now, I know this is going to be tough for people watching this. I understand because I'm going through it too, watching it and knowing the actual history of it. But just like them, let's keep it respectable in the comments and let's try not to let our emotions get the best of us. I know it hurts. I know, hey, there's nothing we can do to change that. I'm sorry, but let's just be respectable in the comments, man. During this massacre, they lost everything. I mean, everything was completely burned down. Houses were raided, houses were looted. And like I said, everything was burned down. And on top of that, people were murdered. They were just slain in the street. One thing they do point out is the trajectory of where Black Wall Street was going to go is unimaginable. Unless you've seen these clips, you wouldn't believe black people owned, when I tell you owned every single thing within this community, they owned it all. So that right there is something we could look at and we could build off of now. The legacy of Black Wall Street is deeper than what you think, people. The Greenwood district was a symbol of what black communities could be in America. They had everything. They had the industrial, they had the farming. It's just, I can't harp on it enough. They had the schools, they had everything. And this was just showing other cities, hey, if black people come together, bring your money together, we can actually make something that is livable, something that we can grow with and be proud of. In order to know where Black Wall Street started, we have to go back to the 1830s where the Trail of Tears started. Now, the Trail of Tears is where they moved the Native Americans from Southeast America towards the territory, which is now known as Oklahoma because it wasn't a state back then. Now, I used to work with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, so I know a little bit about this and I can speak on it. But what happened is they transferred the Native Americans to this territory. Now, the Native Americans, they got land. But one thing they won't ever teach you or they won't ever tell you is that the Native Americans, they also owned black slaves. Now, they're never going to teach you this in school. All they're going to tell you is how the white man took land from them. But they're not going to tell you that the Native Americans also owned slaves. And they took these slaves with them from Southeast America to the territories in Oklahoma. That's how Tulsa and everything started. That's how the blacks got to Oklahoma. They were slaves. The reason the Native Americans, the indigenous, they did this is because they wanted to show the white folk, oh, we're allies, so we'll take on slaves also. You see, we were at the bottom. Native Americans got treated bad. Don't get me wrong. Not taking nothing away from what happened to them, because that was bad. But they also held blacks as slaves. And the first blacks into Oklahoma were Native American slaves. Now, the Native Americans, the 5 tribes that moved to Oklahoma, they had to sign a removal act. And what this removal act said was, hey, we agree that we're going to leave here. You're going to give us some land. But also with signing this removal act, they had to get rid of their slaves. Now, this is what the white man does. He says, hey, oh, you guys can keep slaves, but when you take this land, you got to remove slaves. So you'll be up under us. We'll still be all right with you guys, but you're not going to be equal to us and you can't own slaves. So that's how blacks became free, because they were removed during this removal act when they got to the territory of what is now Oklahoma. The Trail of Tears was about 100,000 Native Americans with 4,000 blacks, which were slaves at the time. Once they got to these territories and were settled and the Civil War was over, these blacks, they had to build what the Native Americans had in Southeast America before they moved. So they had to do this. But once they were freed, now they get to live on this Native American land, but they're free. They have to stay on this reservation type. Well, it wasn't a reservation then. They have to stay on this land, the territories that is now owned by the Native Americans. Each of the 5 tribes had their own territory, but of course the government comes in and they just label it Indian territory. Oh, and the rest we're taking and we're going to make this Oklahoma territory. We always hear about 40 acres and a mule. Well, the blacks that were in Oklahoma actually received that. There was 1.2 million acres that was given out. And the blacks that were free, that were on this Indian territory, they actually received that. And that's what they all used to come together to start living as free men. Any land that was left over from the allotment that the Native Americans had, it was up for sale. The government let it sell. Now, there was a gentleman, a businessman, O.W. Gurley, from Arkansas. He actually moved out to Oklahoma and he started buying up land. Now, this land is, think about it. This land is what white people thought was inhabitable. They didn't think you were going to be able to grow anything. But little did they know, this land was better than what they thought it was. Mr. Gurley, he had a vision. And what did he do? He opened up a grocery store, which eventually turned into the main road in Greenwood. So he knew, we buy this land, we start getting people that can farm, we get people that can herd, we start just building little bitty infrastructures one at a time, then we actually have us a nice little location. And this is one of his ads that he had for his first grocery store. O.W. Gurley, he's buying up land. And now most blacks, they've never even envisioned owning some land, but they see him, he owns land. Now what Gurley does is he looks at the whole situation and he decides that I'm only going to sell my land to black people because I want to bring up other black people. So it'd be, hey, here go maybe a half an acre, because back then it was cheap. I mean, it wasn't cheap, but compared to today's time, maybe a acre of land was what, $19. So you give them a quarter of an acre for maybe $5. So these black people, they're seeing this and they're just following what Gurley is doing. He has a grocery store. This man knows what he's doing and he's only selling to black people. It was known that if you want to be free, come to this territory. You're able to buy land. And even if you can't buy the land, the people were allowing you to live in houses with them just to get on your feet. And people would come from Mississippi and everything because they knew down there you were limited to what you could do because of the skin color. So if you wanted to be free, this territory is the place you wanted to be. Mind you, it's still not a state yet. This is just the Indian territory. Now it's a migration. Blacks are here and, oh, go to Greenwood. Go to Greenwood. If you want to be free, you want to be able to do something in life, go to Greenwood. Now, remember I told you that the white folk didn't think that this land was inhabitable. Turns out, black gold. There is oil all on this land. So, of course, you know, millions. Oil has always been worth millions, even in their time. We just talked about a plot of land for $5. Millions. This turned this area into the oil capital of the world. At this time, we didn't know what Saudi Arabia and the Middle East was doing. All we knew is there's oil and it's here. But most blacks, They didn't work on oil fields. They didn't know anything about this. So what they did was they worked for the rich white folk that actually knew how to do oil. It's only because we never experienced this before. Tulsa becomes a oil boom. Everybody's migrating here because it's big money. But unfortunately, the Native Americans and the blacks, they don't get cut in on this. And we still see this now, how they're trying to move oil pipelines through Native American land. So like, what are we really doing here? But that's America for you. Greenwood's model was easy. You come, you build, you help the community. So everybody was migrating here. And we know that Gurley was one of the first people to buy land there. But Mr. J.B. Stratford, he played a vital role also. He was you would think 1 and 2, boom, Shaq and Kobe. That's how good these two were together. And they had the business mind and the mindset to actually, hey, let's keep this together. Let's make sure that everybody gets a fair opportunity within Greenwood. Now, what Mr. Stratford did, on the other hand, it worked directly with Gurley. Now, we know Gurley was buying up the land, selling it to people. What Stratford was doing was the financial side. People had to go to school to do what he was doing. He was issuing out loans. He was helping people out. He would give you starter capital. He was actually, oh, you came in, you need some help? All right, we'll do this. Here goes some money. Get something started. You'll pay us back. Boom. So he was doing everything that a banker does. And he was just so far advanced. Him and Gurley, hey, that's that 1-2 punch. These two gentlemen, way ahead of their time. The Oklahoma Territory is starting to get a lot of attention. So now there's no Jim Crow there, but they want to make Oklahoma a state. So what they do is a lot of black people, they actually travel to D.C. to go talk to Teddy Roosevelt, the president, is like, hey, we want to become part of the union, but we don't want Jim Crow laws down here. We want to, keep it a black state. But the powers that be, they issued Jim Crow, and Oklahoma became a southern state. So what did the blacks do? We couldn't go shop in the white area. We built our own stuff. We had 35 blocks, everything you could look for, pharmacies, hospitals, schools. They even had a movie theater with 700 seats in it. No one has 700 seats in a movie theater now. So the black people said, oh, we can't spend our dollar with the white folk. We gonna spend it with other black people. Fine, my dollar goes to you. I know my dollar is safe right there. I know when you spend that dollar, it's gonna go over to Teddy. I know when Teddy gets it, it's gonna go over to Eric. When Eric gets it, it's gonna come back to me. We're just circulating our dollars and everybody is benefiting from it. But don't think it was all work and no play, because we had us some clubs. We had jazz in there. They going crazy. Got the girls dancing. You got movie theaters. So, if I was back then, y'all would have seen me in that thing just dancing. You know what I'm saying? We got bootleggers. We had everything. This was a legit city. That would have been some good times. I ain't going to lie. Now, Mr. J.B. Stratford, I told you, he's thinking. He opened up lavish hotels, and these hotels, they could compete with any white hotel. As far as the decor, they had crystal chandeliers, marble. They had it all. They were doing it. I'm talking about business was booming. Lula Williams, she's a founder of Black Wall Street. Her and her husband, they own the movie theater. They own the body shop. They even got footage of them riding around in that drop top. I don't know what it is for, but they got the drop top on them. So they were living good. And these people were the ones that showed blacks how you can make something out of nothing. They showed, hey, we can take this land. We can do this. All we got to do is invest, believe in ourselves, and we can make it happen. Dreamland Theater. 700 seats. The premier place for all of the movies. There's no place like it. You even got the chandelier at the top. Now, this was a high class movie theater. I'm talking about you go in there, you pay your hard earned 10 cents and you about to watch something good. Woo, they even had some live performances in there. Mr. J.B. Stratford was doing it all. Now, he wrote a letter to Mr. A.J. Smitherman in 1921. He was just explaining to him what's actually going on in Greenwood. And he wishes that their city would become more liberal because they're working hard for everything they got. So it's not like they were handed anything. They worked hard for it and they deserved it all. And he's just letting Smitherman know, hey, we need to have more of these around the country. But right now, Greenwood, that is the place to be. Tulsa, the oil capital. The land that was uninhabitable. They said, oh, you ain't gonna be able to grow nothing. Let's give it to the black folk. Turn out there's oil on it. There's a lot of money coming in. Now the pipe layers, the white folk that were laying pipes to the oil, they were trying to seize the land. Since they couldn't, what they do, they went to the government and the government came up with a plan. All right, if there's any black children with an allotment that has land on it, we're going to assign a white person to be this kid's guardian, and they're going to control all the money. The guardian controlled the money. So with millions of dollars coming in, they were supposed to get the money and distribute it to the kids. But why would they put white people in charge of that? Because they know that money isn't going to go to the black folk and it's going to keep the black folk down. They felt the black parents were incompetent. So there's a gentleman named Roy Renty, and he had a white man placed as a guardian over his kids. And you know what he did? He went to that white man and told him, the day that you're the guardian of my kids is the day that you die. So he went to A.J. Smitherman. They went to court. They ended up winning this. And when they won this, it gave him back the guardianship of his child because they were trying to deny the money from the black people. They were doing everything they can. Kind of sounds like suppressing the vote, doesn't it? But they were trying to do everything they can to keep this money from the black people. And Renty said, man, I'll kill you. You think you the guardian of my man? Get out of here with that nonsense. AJ not only won this case, he started the Negro Guardianship League, where if you had a child and they were trying to bring in a guardian for it, oh, we're coming here and we'll fight your case for you because they're not taking what's yours. AJ's thinking, he said, you know what? We need a newspaper because the white folks, their newspaper that they're putting out, they ain't talking nothing about what's going on for blacks. They're not giving us anything. So he actually finds a press company and he starts up a newspaper, the Tulsa Star. And that thing was getting sent nationwide. These men and women, they were really thinking outside of the box. They were growing at a faster rate than these white folk because the white folk weren't doing nothing but depending on the black people to build everything. They call him the originator of social media because he's everywhere. He has a newspaper. He's writing everything. He's the modern day Twitter. If he's writing and it's going in that newspaper, everybody wants to read it. They want to know what's going on because now they're getting the actual news. For your young people watching, there wasn't always cell phones. We had to read newspapers and stuff. Dr. A.C. Jackson, one of the most important surgeons that black people had in the time. And he moved to Greenwood and opened up his own practice. Dr. A.C. Jackson was a bad man. He opened up his practice. You know, the Mayo Clinic, it was started by two brothers, William and Charlie, and they actually acknowledged him as the best black doctor in America. This was a bad man. In order to be recognized by two white doctors that opened their own clinic, to acknowledge you on a level of national, this is the best black doctor, that's out of here. That is out of here. Now, I told you in the beginning with that racism and hate, along comes jealousy. Now, the black people, they didn't want to be equals on the economic field because, hey, we got money. Green is green everywhere. If you got some cash, 9 times out of 10, they might accept that money. But the blacks wanted to be equal on a social level. You're a human, I'm a human, respect me as one. Now, the white folk, they didn't like this because if they felt that these black people, they're smart, they get an education, they got money, there's no reason they should be living better than how I'm living. Because for the most part, the people in Tulsa, outside of Greenwood, in the Black Wall Street, they weren't doing that well. They were just average people. Here, we have a middle class. The average person is middle class. Augusta Stratford is Mr. J.B. Stratford's wife. Now, she gets in trouble because she's on a train from Kansas to Oklahoma and she refuses to give up her seat. And the reason this happened is because in Kansas, there is no Jim Crow laws. When you get on a train, wherever you sit at is where you sit at. But once you cross that state line into the Jim Crow, Oklahoma, you're supposed to get up and move to the back. But she didn't do that because why? Why would I get up? I'm riding on this train. What, I got to look outside and wait for the, state line and then go to the back? No, she didn't give up her seat for that. And of course, you know that them white folks got mad about that. JB and his wife, what do? They go ahead and sue the train station because this is a violation of the Constitution. If I get on this train, I shouldn't have to switch seats. I'm a free person. I'm going to ride this train however I want to. But collectively, we got to come together. And that's exactly what they do. We all come out and we start protesting. But you got to remember, in the 1920s, there's a big racial divide. Very big. The Klan is up in full strength at this point. Blacks, they're trying to get their equal rights. So it's a lot of stuff going on here. At this point, there's just a lot of negative things happening towards black people because black men in general were stereotyped. Oh, that's a criminal. That is a bad guy. Just looking at a black guy in the 1920s, he's a criminal. He's not smart. So it was just a huge racial divide, and there were a lot of attacks on black men. They also started crowd control, population control of black people. And this here is the picture of a group of white men standing around a burning body of a man named Will Brown because they were doing population control of blacks. Just so you can get a mindset of where America was in 1915, the birth of a nation, the original birth of a nation. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty much about the Klan and trying to get rid of the white folk. The president actually called for a screening at the White House for a birth of a nation, not the new one that we know about, but a birth of a nation where it's talking about killing blacks and making sure blacks don't ever do anything successful or succeed in life. As I was saying before, the racial tensions keep getting higher and higher. But if you're just a farm owner in Mississippi, but you see there's black people with better cars, dressing better than you, living better than you, better education, speak better than you, hey, we're supposed to be superior than black folk. But you're not. You're not. Nobody's superior to anybody. But their living conditions are better than yours. And that's what really pissed them white people off. And they just keep on clawing and clawing. The city of Tulsa, they seen all this money that was coming into Greenwood and they didn't like it. So what they did was they tried to force blacks to, hey, you got to sell land in Greenwood. We're going to buy up some of that land and y'all got to move further north. Pretty much take over the infrastructure that's already in place and try to replicate the same thing. Move in some white stores, collect some of that money. They just didn't want blacks to do anything. I mean, we still see it now. We're moving mailboxes. They move everything from us, don't they? A.J. Smitherman put in the Tulsa Star, listen, we have rights and we're not compromising. Plain and simple. We're not compromising as colored folk. We are not compromising. We built this place and we ain't going nowhere. In the state of Oklahoma, A.J. Smitherman was the first registered black Democrat because at this time, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. So most blacks were voting Republican. And it was going to be hard to find other black Democrats. So what he did was, hey, here in Oklahoma, hey, let's become black Democrats. Let's get away from this Republican Party. And that's how the Democratic Party started becoming black because they moved away from the Republican Party. Now, Abe didn't really free no slaves. He may have said this and that. He ain't freed nothing. So we had to go do it on our own to become Democrats. We had to get up out that Republican Party. And here we are 100 years later. Hey, blacks are predominantly Democrats. And it all started down in Oklahoma. So Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, the Black Wall Street is very pivotal in the black movement. This is where it all really started. Does this sound familiar? The black Democrats showed the white people that there's power in all of us. And the power to vote can really change a lot of situations. Kind of sounds like 2020, right? 2021. Crazy how history repeats itself. Or sometimes it doesn't ever end. And the only way white people knew to get rid of the black vote was to get rid of the black people. Get rid of the black people, you don't get a black vote. Democrats don't win anything. Laws are still the same. And then this is where you start getting all of these lynchings. There's mobs. There's a black guy out by himself. It wouldn't be safe. Hey, make sure you walk in a group or something because these white folk, they looking for any and everything to try to kill you. How we have Karens, this has been going on. The tactics where a white woman could say anything about a black man and everyone would come to her defense, whether she's lying or not. And the black person would always catch the end, the bad end of it. We call them Karens now. We seen it with Emmett Till. She lied about the young man whistling at her. He never did that. And the same thing that started this whole massacre in Tulsa, we're going to get into it, was from the same type of situation. I was saying that this all started in the same type of situation. There was a young man named Dick Rowland. He dropped out of high school at Booker T. Washington School to go shine shoes. Now, he was making a lot of money, and they called him Diamond Dick because, hey, he had a diamond encrusted belt buckle. He was making money out there, just shining all of the white men's shoes. But he had to go into a building to use the bathroom, and it was on the 4th floor. Now he had to take the elevator to get there. He would have to get on the elevator and go to the 4th floor to use the restroom. Now there was a young lady on there, a white lady on there, and she operated the elevator. He would go up there every single day to use the bathroom. But one day she screams out, she yells, and she runs. And then later on that day, she says, he raped me too. All of this in an elevator ride from the 1st floor to the 4th floor. She said this young man, Dick Rowland, raped her. Now, Dick Rowland is arrested and he's in the courthouse. Well, he's in the jail cell and the courthouse are in the same building, but they actually lock him up. So now he's stuck in here, charged with attempted assault on a white girl and later on rape. Now rumors are going all around town. You hear that black boy, he raped that good old white girl. Now there's a mob. They're going down to the courthouse and jail and they're out there and it's a mob. Word gets across the train tracks to the black people in Greenwood and they're hearing this. And AJ and everybody, they're like, whoa. We need to go down there, arm up, head down there and give this young man Dick some protection because he hasn't even had his chance in court yet. You guys are assuming this man is guilty just off of some girl that said he raped her in a 4-floor ride. He assaulted her and raped her. So hey, they got the guns and they headed on down there. The blacks, they gather up. Now there was a lot of World War I vets that came back, so they all grabbed their guns and they went down to Tulsa. And it's pretty much, hey, we're gonna set up a wall because you're not gonna mess with this young man. Let's hear what happens in court. Now, no one believes that this young man did that because he's been there working for ages. Now, the white newspaper comes out with an article. Oh, there's trouble in Tulsa. There may be a lynching tonight. Some accounts say there was over 1,000 white people outside of the courthouse. And they said they were just there to see what was going to happen. But we know how these mobs get. They're going to all participate in hurting this young man, potentially killing him. So, AJ, he gathered up, like I said, all the World War I vets. They got their guns, hopped in trucks, and they headed over there because this is going into the middle of the night. This is how close the community is. There were kids. Mr. Goodwin, he was about to graduate from Booker T High School. But word got around, hey, it's going to be trouble in Tulsa. They stopped the graduation and all the black people, they got out their gowns because they got to figure out what is going on. Because one of their own is accused of something they know that he didn't do. And it's 10:30 at night. And the mob is still out there. But the black people, they have to stay in order to protect Dick and make sure that no one touches him. The way all of this started is the black people were there with guns. Now, you know these white people, they get in your face, they yell, they spit, and they're asking them, what you gonna do with that gun, boy? And the black man told him, look, you get any closer, I'm gonna use this thing. Just as simple as that. And then a gunshot goes off, he shoots this man, and now it's just, hey, load them up and let it loose, people. Let it loose. These white folks, they're outmatched, they're outgunned. So what do? They try to break into a National Guard armory. They start breaking into hardware stores and getting hammers, anything they can do because the black people, they're armed. They went to war. They have their guns. They're ready to defend what they can. And these white people, like I said, the first guy, what you gonna do with that? He got shot, probably dead because, you know, back then it wasn't urgent care. So these white people, they trying to do everything they can because at this point, hey, their back is against the wall. They don't have the gunpowder that the blacks do. Now, they don't know how many people were actually deputized by the sheriff, meaning, hey, you're an officer of the law now, you're good. But what they do know is the sheriff told them, grab a gun, get busy, kill a nigger. Do I need to repeat that? Grab a gun, get busy, kill a nigger. That's what was going on in Tulsa, all because of a white girl lying. A race war started. The media never told the white people what was really going on. What they did was spread a false narrative to make the white people look good. They said, oh, the black people were fleeing and running for their life. No, the black people were armed up. They were using tactics they learned from the military and getting in places to defend themselves. Now, once the white people crossed the track, they said it was all calm later on in the night. But at 5 a.m, you hear a long, loud work horn just going off. Just ooh. And this is where the white people tried to storm over the train tracks to get into Greenwood. But little did they know. What they didn't know, there was a veteran named Peg Leg Taylor. And he had a Gatling gun that he brought back from the war. And he was on this hill. And what did he do? As soon as them white folk came across, that Gatling gun let loose. And I'm talking about it was laying them down. They were not prepared for that. This man was really ready. He said, man, the hell with that. I'm bringing me back a Gatling gun. And when I was over in Germany, I got me a couple of bullets and stuff from World War II, but I ain't got no damn Gatling gun. And now at this point, we got the Gatling gun going. We have an all-out war. Now, Miss Gloria Jennings, she said her grandfather was loading up the guns. Her great-grandfather, they sent her grandmother and sisters and stuff off to their mother's house. And the men, they stayed there and they held down Greenwood as much as they could. It now became the white people's mission to just destroy the whole town. I mean, burn everything down to the ground. And it turns out they deputized 500 people, and they were to arrest black people and, if need be, kill them. We really had an all-out war. All right, there you go. That is episode 1 of The Legacy of Black Wall Street. Let me know what you think about the whole thing so far. Now, I know there was a lot of points that people didn't understand. Like, I know probably 90% of people didn't know that Native Americans actually owned slaves. So if you didn't know that, let me know below. I'm Mo.J. Thanks for watching. If you like the content on the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Be here next week for episode 2 of The Legacy of Black Wall Street. I'm out.
Jimmy on the beat, boy.